So here's the headline from the New York Times. They say Russia's oil revenue soars despite sanctions, study finds. Not because of sanctions. No, despite sanctions. So the study that they're citing is from the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. And it's very interesting, to say the least. Do you know how much money Russia has made because of sanctions? Just take a guess. Seriously, tell me right now in the comments. How much money do you think Russia has made just in the last months alone? So since February till June. Take a guess, and you still wouldn't find the right answer. Russia earned 93 billion euros from fossil fuel exports in the first 100 days of the war. So that's February 24th until June 3rd. 93 billion euros in revenue. The EU, the European Union, imported 61% of this. So 57 billion out of 93 billion is thanks to the EU. You got Ursula von der Leyen, the EU commissioner. She's doing all sorts of somersaults right now to explain this away. Oh, no. So the largest importers were China, then Germany, then Italy, Netherlands, Turkey, Poland, and so on. Keep in mind, you see the difference between China and Germany? So China spent 12.6 billion and Germany spent 12.1 billion. So this revenue, that's around 46 billion euros just for oil. 24 billion for gas, so, roughly half, and 13 billion for oil products. LNG, liquefied natural gas, right? This is their alternative, their proposed alternative for Russian gas. Russia got 5.1 billion euros from that. Pay attention to this line. They say Russia's export revenues have been falling since March, but remain record high. How does that work? They said import volumes fell modestly in May, around 15% compared with the time before the invasion, as many countries and firms shunned Russian supplies. The reduction in demand and the discounted price for Russian oil cost the country approximately 200 million euros a day. Okay? So, just so you understand this, Russia, it was costing them 200 million euros per day in May. However, increase in fossil demand has created a windfall. Russia's average export prices were an average 60% higher than last year, even if they were discounted from international prices. Wow. So China overtook Germany as the largest importer. We saw that. Poland and the US made the largest dents in Russia's revenue. But the record high fossil fuel prices and the drive to reduce reliance on Russia have prompted increased ambition for clean energy and energy efficiency across Europe, which will effectively lessen the impact of banning imports from Russia. Yeah, right. They're just getting that oil from somewhere else. It's not because they want to go green, right? Now look at this. India, France, China, the Emirates, and the Saudis, they increased imports. This is very significant. India became a significant importer of Russian crude. India bought 18% of Russia's exports. Can you imagine? A significant share of the crude, here we go, a significant share of the crude is re-exported as refined oil products to the United States and Europe. Do you understand what's going on? The Europeans, the Americans, they all talk about, we got to ban Russian oil and Russian this and Russian that. We got to slash Putin's war chest. It turns out they're just buying it through India. How'd you like that? How'd you like that? Most of Russian fossil fuel is transported on European ships. Oh my goodness. Look at this. 68% of deliveries between April and May. So this is the majority of Russian oil deliveries were made with ships owned by EU, UK, and Norwegian companies. Greek tankers alone carried 43%. Speaking of which, you might find 2 of those tankers missing. But not the ones carrying Russian oil. Oh no. Because that whole issue with, the Greeks stealing 2 Iranian tankers carrying Iranian oil, and then Iran retaliating by taking 2 Greek tankers. That's a whole other story, but I just wanted to make a reference to that. Check this out. For deliveries to India and the Middle East, the share was even higher at 80%. 97% of the tankers issued from the same places. Do you understand how significant this is? This is crazy. I want to go back to this just to show you how there's a clear increase from January, February, then March. And it's not going away. It's not going away. They kept talking about how they're going to punish the Russians with these sanctions. And yet, they couldn't target the energy sector until just now when they banned Russian oil, but still that's also going to take a long time. They are hypocrites because they talk about cutting revenue to the Russians and they're still buying the oil either directly or indirectly. And they're so dumb that they have caused the price to go up. That's how smart these people are. They said that, okay, we are going to sanction Russian oil. The EU said that they're going to ban 90% of Russian oil. The Americans banned Russian oil, and they banned Russian coal as well, the EU. And what ended up happening is they just made the prices go up. So Russia, instead of selling to the Europeans the same volume that got slashed, or to the Americans, they're selling it now to India, or they're selling it to their Asian neighbors. They're selling it to other customers, where those guys, by the way, India is getting it at a discount. But the ones that are not getting it at a discount are still paying a premium. Do you understand? Because they've driven the prices up so high. Wow. Well done. Well done. They say here in the New York Times that revenue from oil and gas in 2021 alone made up 45% of Russia's federal budget. That's crazy. And the revenue from Russia's fossil fuel exports exceed what the country is spending on its war in Ukraine. So basically, all this narrative about cutting Putin's funding, as they like to put it, it's obviously not working. And they talk about Ukrainians urging the EU and others to cut Russian imports, and yet everything keeps falling short. Because no matter what they cut, they are still importing most of what they used to bring in, and now at a higher price. So I think this is stupidity of the highest order, because they're making people in Europe, they're making people everywhere pay a premium, pay more for basic goods. There's a food shortage now in Africa, in the Middle East. Yemen, just as an example, Yemen, they get lots of their wheat. 40% of their wheat comes from Ukraine and Russia. And it's not just the supply disruptions, it's the prices that are getting higher. So they're screwing everybody, really. It's not just about, people living in the West. They're screwing everybody worldwide. And not only are they failing in cutting funding to Russia's war machine, as they like to put it, on top of that, they are making everybody else pay more for basic goods. Do you understand how stupid this is? Look at this. The European Union made most progress on reducing its imports of natural gas from Russia. Remember, I did a whole bunch of videos on Russia demanding rubles for its gas, and I basically should make a playlist just for that. And so they're saying that the EU bought 23% less of Russian gas in the first 100 days of the invasion than compared to the last year. So that went down by a quarter. Still, the income at Gazprom, which is Russia's state-owned gas company, remained twice as high as the year before, thanks to higher gas prices. Well done. Well done. You are so smart. Really. You guys are incredibly, you're galaxy-sized brain geniuses. Well done. The EU reduced its imports of Russian crude, which declined by 18% in May, but that dip was made up by India and the UAE, who are, of course, then sending it to the EU and the US, leading to no net change in Russia's oil export volumes. That's literally exactly what I told you 2 minutes ago. Whatever the EU is not buying is being grabbed up by other customers. And the prices are higher in some cases. There are countries, India gets it at a discount and in rupees, rubles. But Do you understand how stupid they are? They're basically rerouting Russia's sales and benefiting Russia, if anything. They've only benefited Russia. As we said, India has become a significant importer of Russian crude, 18%. Like I said, the EU agreed to an embargo, which covers roughly 3/4 of Russian oil shipped to the region, but that won't be I honestly, they're basically just saying everything I already told you and confirming to you, repeating to you, corroborating to you everything that we've outlined on the channel right here. Since the beginning, man, I've been covering this war, not just about what's happening in Ukraine, but how the Ukraine war is affecting the rest of the world. This is also a very important dimension that should be examined in tandem. Very, very important. And the gas, the oil, the coal bans, the sanctions, Russia's increased revenue because of this stupidity. This is also something that has to be looked at, because if the whole point of sanctions is to stop Russia from being able to wage war, A, that has failed. B, Russia is now even richer in addition to being able to wage war. And now you have screwed not only people in the West who have to pay higher prices, but actually people everywhere who are starving and cannot pay or afford regular prices in the first place. And as I've told you, Hungary, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, they are exempt from the EU ban on Russian oil. I'm really glad that we covered all of this chunk by chunk in videos, because it really gives you such a clear understanding, I hope, about what's been happening and how it developed. Here we have Janet Yellen, who, took over as the woman in charge of starving people in Syria and everywhere else that's under US sanctions. She said that Washington was in talks with the EU about forming a cartel that would set a cap on the price of Russian oil roughly equal to the price of production. So that would trim Russia's fossil fuel revenues while also keeping Russian oil flowing to global markets. They're just not getting it, are they? They're really not understanding that what they have done and set in motion now is basically the transition to the multipolar world that we're talking about. They tell you that, the whole world, the international community is united against Russia. And when you look at a map of countries that have sanctioned Russia, it's just the West. So actually, no, most of the world, most of the international community does not stand against Russia. They're either, most of them are basically condemning Russia at the UN in votes, but when it comes to buying Russian oil, when it comes to buying Russian gas, they're going to buy it. And some of them are even getting a discount on top of it. So they think now that they can go form a cartel, and they think that they can, basically wield power through Western institutions. I'm sorry, man. They're dreaming. They just don't get it. They just don't get it that things are moving away. They don't get it. And here's an article from the Wall Street Journal. This was published 1st of June. And it says Russian oil producers stay one step ahead of sanctions. The cargoes of Russian crude are basically getting to New York and New Jersey. How are they getting there? Well, they're being brought through the Suez Canal and across the Atlantic from Indian refineries. Indian refineries, which have been big buyers of Russian oil. Okay, so in the wake of the invasion and sanctions, traders have been working to obscure the origins of Russian oil. So basically, to keep Russian oil coming in, but to hide that it originated from Russia. That's what this is about. Okay, so the oil is being concealed in blended refined products such as gasoline, diesel, and chemicals. Oil is also being transferred between ships at sea, a page out of the playbook used to buy and sell sanctioned Iranian and Venezuelan oil. The transfers are happening in the Mediterranean off the coast of West Africa and the Black Sea, with oil then heading towards China, India, and Western Europe, according to shipping companies. Again, just let me say something. Let me comment on their sentence here, that this is out of the playbook to buy and sell sanctioned Iranian and Venezuelan oil. I mean, this is relatively neutral, but usually they'll speak about this or, talk about this as if it's something shady. Keep in mind, the sanctions, US sanctions on Cuba, on Venezuela, on Syria, on Iran, they're illegal under international law and they're unilateral. They're only US sanctions. They're not sanctioned by, no pun intended, they're not sanctioned by any international body. They have no legitimacy. So they are not shady. Iran and Venezuela are not US colonies. Do you understand? They are two countries. They can do whatever the hell they want. And seizing their oil and selling it and pirating their oil is what the US and UK have been doing. This is disgusting. It's piracy. But of course, they'll never tell you that in the media. Here's what I wanted to show you. This is the exact graph that I was trying to show you before. Do you see how the deliveries of Russian crude to India have gone up so much since the war started? So they stopped for a while, a tiny bit here in March, and then they start shooting up again. So India was never importing this much. Almost 350,000 barrels a day in May, right, at this period. And before that, it never, ever brought this much. So the reason is because India is taking advantage of the situation. They're like, hey, man, if you don't want it, we're going to take it. And we're also going to get it at a discount. And on top of it, we're also going to make more money by refining it and concealing it, as they said, in derivative oil products and then, getting it out like that. The U.S. embargo prohibits imports of crude, petroleum products, liquefied natural gas, and coal from Russia, but fuels are often made from blends of different products such as diesel. So OFAC is basically the Office of Foreign Assets Control. It's the body that puts U.S. sanctions on countries. So OFAC defines origin using 25% or more as a benchmark, as a threshold. Okay, so if it contains 25% or more of Russian oil or coal or whatever, then it's banned. Okay? It excludes goods that have been substantially transformed into another foreign-made product. Whether refining crude into oil products like gasoline or diesel counts for this exclusion has not been made clear yet by OFAC. Do you know why? The Americans are not stupid. If they wanted to make that clear, they would have made it bloody clear. I know from my experience, from professional work, from my experience reading court documents, reading all of this, these assurances, how they screw people. They make things vague on purpose when it benefits them, right? So, a European country will say, we're not giving you this prisoner, we're not extraditing this guy unless you agree not to give him a life sentence. And then the Americans will say, yeah, we will try our best not to give a life sentence, but a determinate amount of incarceration, which could mean anything. That could mean 1,000 gazillion years, right? And they'll give the guy 50 years, 60 years, and make sure he dies in jail, same thing. So this is how they play it. And my point here, just to try and draw an analogy, is that the Americans are keeping things vague on purpose because they know that the Europeans are screwed without this oil. They know that they themselves are screwed without this oil. That's why they've done that. Make no mistake about it. So overall, Russian oil exports rebounded in April after dropping in March, as we saw down here. Russia's oil exports rose by 620,000 barrels to 8.1 million barrels a day. Wow. Close to its pre-war levels, with the biggest increase going to India. India has emerged as a key hub for Russian oil flows. The country's imports have skyrocketed to 800,000 barrels a day since the war began, compared with just 30,000 barrels a day previously. That is likely because of the deep discount. That's the discount I was telling you about many times before. A popular grade of Russian crude known as Urals is priced at around $35 below Brent. It previously traded largely in line with the benchmark. So just to be clear, you have certain types of oil that we looked at before, based on the sulfur content and the density. You have heavy, light, sweet, sour, and and basically what's happening here is that they're talking about Brent, which is the world's benchmark, but up until now, Urals was closely priced. The gap was never this big before. So basically, Urals is now so cheap, the Russian oil is so cheap compared to Brent, that it just makes sense economically not to get it. Not to get the Brent, I mean. When you're seeing something for so cheap, you're going to go get that one instead. Although, let me be very clear, they're not the exact same kind of crude, right? So you still have to refine them and so on, and that entails a different process. So it's not like it doesn't come with other challenges. Nevertheless, you can see here, import of Russian oil to India skyrocketing in May. So this refinery in India bought 7 times more Russian crude in May compared with pre-war levels. right? And it's called Reliance Industries. They have an oil tanker carrying alkylite, a gasoline component, departing from nearby Sika port on April 21st without a planned destination. 3 days later, it updates its records with a U.S. port and sailed over, discharging its cargo on May 22nd in New York. You don't need to be a genius to figure that one out. And if I know this, and you know this, and the Wall Street Journal know this, OFAC know this, the Treasury know this, the Americans are not stupid. They know exactly what that oil was and where it came from before it even landed, before it even arrived. They cannot afford to cut off Russia. This is all just a big game that they're playing. And unfortunately, when the prices go up, it doesn't screw the politicians. It screws, regular average Joes, right? So you, me, the people that are not millionaires or billionaires who can't afford to pay 4 times more for gas. Those guys, the bureaucrats, they don't even notice this stuff. What likely happened was that Reliance, this Indian oil company, took on a discounted cargo of Russian crude, refined it, and then sold the product on the short-term market where it found a U.S. buyer. Yeah, so this is what's happening. And this is why the Russians are making bank. They are making so much money. They are making so much money. And this is what I meant before, is that, these sanctions, they are not going to work. And they are not going to stop the war. And the only people they hurt are civilians, as usual, right? As usual. Now, this doesn't mean that in the long term you might not have, problems from the sanctions. Of course. But I think Russia it's not the same as Venezuela or Syria or Iran. You can't judge it like that because the sanctions there, they're dumped on the people in Venezuela. People suffering, can't buy cancer medication, can't import replacement parts for medical equipment. Their lives just destroyed. And no one in the West even knows it, don't care. But this is different, right? Europe has so many ties, deep ties to Russia's economy, and vice versa. They are so intertwined. The supply chains are so intertwined that you cannot just pull the plug, and expect things to be okay. You just can't do that. So they're lying about banning Russian oil. They're just buying a little less and then having it imported through another way. It's like with Poland. Poland says it's cutting Russian gas, but actually the gas is still going from Russia through the same pipeline to Germany and then being sent back in reverse to Poland. Just making people in Poland pay extra for gas, making people everywhere pay extra for food for no purpose whatsoever. Just so they can, do their whole Russophobia nonsense and look like they're actually taking a stance. You want to take a stance? Go sit down and do some diplomacy, the real tough work that you don't want to do. But I want to just show you over here. 1 USD in rubles, 58. So again, when's the last time we had 58? 2017. Are you telling me that the ruble is at its best since 2017? No way. 2018, there you have all the different sorts of fossil fuel exports and their estimated revenue, right? So Russia obviously making the bulk of that from crude oil, and then the next one in purple is pipeline gas. And 93 billion euros in revenue. This is just in the first 100 days. Remember the other day we were looking at how Russia has already met the quota, more than half, right, of the quota that it sets out in expected revenue for energy exports for 2022. So let us look at the summary. We are now the 15th of June. This war started on the 24th of February, although I think many would disagree and say that it started in 2014. But nevertheless, for argument's sake, this war has been going on now for several months. Have the sanctions worked? No. They've only made Russia increase its revenues from fossil fuel exports, whether it's oil, it's gas. Russia's making even more money. The ruble is at its best since 2018, 2017. I don't even know. And the war is still continuing. The only thing that has changed is that the weapons manufacturers got rich. Okay? That's it. They say, oh, we're sending aid to Ukraine. We're sending this military aid. that money goes from Washington, D.C. to Wall Street. That's it. It stays in the U.S. It's not going anywhere. I'm of course simplifying this. You know, you have BAE Systems owners. Do you understand though the point? That money doesn't leave the U.S. The weapons leave the U.S. or leave the you know, wherever they're bringing them in from. They have supplies and cash obviously outside the U.S. But the only people really benefiting from this are the arms exporters, are the arms manufacturers, and Russia. How has this helped Ukraine? Please explain to me how this helps Ukraine. When I put in the title that Russia's revenue from fossil fuel exports skyrocketed and soared, I was not kidding, was I? I was not kidding. That was not clickbait, my friend. Oh no.